in culture and the arts, build a bridge to political topics and help raising awareness for our common rights and values. And what kind of political changes are necessary for the cultural and creative sectors to develop? In today's episode of Culture Beyond COVID, our guests Sylvia Winkler and Stephan Köperl, two visual artists from Stuttgart, will provide valuable insights and possible answers to these questions, and at the same time, they are calling for strong democratic structures and freedom for culture and arts to flourish. So, the floor is yours.
Hello, we are Sylvia Winkler and Stephan Köperl. We are visual artists and we are based in Stuttgart, where we have our studio at the Kunstverein Wagenhalle. We are doing collaborative projects since more than 20 years, and we are doing this internationally. So until some years ago, we were traveling or we were abroad for projects and residencies in average 6 months a year. Our projects are developed on the spot, and they always start with an extended research and then are elaborated according to the respective situation or the special context of the area where we are. The subjects we are working on usually or very often involve aspects of city planning or the role of culture in city development, also aspects of democratization or voter culture. And the result or the turnout of these projects often are interventions in public space or very ephemeral interventions, performances, also song lyrics and videos.
Yeah, I give you a short example of one of our interventions that we did in Indonesia. That was in Yogyakarta and funded by the Austrian government. We had the chance to stay in an art space for 3 months. And we started from the spot just by having a look at the city, and we often search for things which are unusual to us or outstanding, where we have questions, what's this or that. And during this time, we came across some flags from various parties, and we realized that the national election was shortly before or ahead, sorry. So we realized that the national elections were ahead, and then we made a research about the different political parties or the whole political system of Indonesia, from the dictatorship of the military to the democratic system that we have now. And we figured out an idea how to react to this situation in an artistic way.
Actually, our work is not that much affected by the pandemic. So during the last years, we did less traveling, but we focused more on local cultural engagement. And this, of course, is going on. We also were quite lucky that all our projects that we were planning for 2020 could happen. So we could actually do them. And but yeah, in general, I have to say that for the artists, it's a precarious life anyway, also without Corona. You probably know that I don't remember the number, but I think it's between 2 and 5% of the artists in Germany who can live from their art, who can make a living from their art. And money usually is coming from different sources, like from honoraries, from selling artwork maybe, but also from side jobs. And we and a lot of our colleagues sometimes have to do money jobs. And these very often are in the cultural sector, so for maybe setting up exhibitions or working for theaters, and they are very much at risk as well now, or they are not happening at the moment. So yeah, that's what I also see for the upcoming years as a real problem.
Yeah, but in general, we were really surprised that suddenly the politicians or the local governments, they shed an eye on the artists, and they say, oh, there are some artists or a lot of self-employed people, there are people in the creative sector, they suffer. And before that, I mean, it was always mentioned how important culture is, but the fate of the single artist was not so much considered. I mean, it was always a life decision. And to become an artist often meant to live on a very, very low social standard, to live precarious. Because it's very difficult if you consider art as a process that is really expressing something and not decorating or just serving the cultural industry. So there are a lot of artists who still live like in Van Gogh's times, I would say, who are between all the grids, who fall through the grid. And maybe for them life always was a little bit harder. And suddenly there is this notion, well, we should help you, and there's a special program, and we even could apply for some money in the state of Baden-Württemberg. And we're very thankful for that. So it was really a surprise. And yeah, I think it's time to say thank you for this attention to the politicians. Both of us, we got 700 euro a month for 3 months, and yeah, that helped us and was nice, and it's a good stimulation. On the other hand, we both were really lucky. We got a lot of scholarships and grants and support, and we cannot complain about that. But of course, it's a lot of work to apply constantly for support to make this living on a very small flame.
Yeah, but I think also as important as the financial support is also the appreciation of art and artists as really relevant for life, for society. And I also, so for me, and I also think for some of my colleagues here, the first lockdown was kind of a relief as well. It was a welcome pause. It was a time for reflection and also for more focus on the production of art, on the studio work. And this time came without all the usual meetings and appointments and discussions and openings, and yeah, and gave us kind of a time to find, maybe to find a new approach to one's work.
I mean, it's difficult not meeting people, not to connect in a physical way, to make networking only through the internet. I realized how important it is to meet people in person, to go to openings. Yeah, but as it stopped so suddenly, it was a kind of, I don't miss something if I stay in the studio and do something for myself.
Yeah, but now, so slowly we're longing for the networking and the openings, yeah, and the meeting people.
But when we were talking about this, about the framework of culture and also of funding, and funding in the condition that we have nowadays, we agreed that it's very important to have a stable framework and a setting in which creative working is possible. That means that we have strong democratic structures, and that the rule of law is implied in each and every country in the European Union. that there is freedom of speech, the freedom of press, and the rule of law. I think this is the most important thing, also to support culture and art, because culture should be a motive for emancipation and not a tool for decoration or just entertainment. So the framework is very, very important, and within this framework, creation can happen, because it's very difficult to distribute the money in a good way, as culture is so fluid and practice of artists is changing all the time. We think this is very important, and this should happen on all levels, on a European level, on the national level, on the local level, that it's always possible to say what the artist, what he or she wants to say, whether this is a cartoon or it is a theater play, that there are no limitations and restrictions. And on the other hand, it's very important to have time and space for creating art, because if you're constantly occupied with doing side jobs because the rents are so high in the city, this also prevents people from becoming political, becoming creative. It should be guaranteed for each and everyone, not only for those artists who studied at a certain academy or art school, that if people want to become creative, that there's a little bit of space and also time that they can reflect on themselves and start to do something which is not productive in the sense that we are always talking about. Because somehow we are all coming from a kind of starvation culture, that it was so much about effectiveness, about how to survive, and culture can be beyond that. So we should really focus on leisure time. We should also think about how to have fun, how to celebrate, how to become what we want to be. And culture should help us in this. Yeah, and that there's a good climate for art, that there is also attention from the media and a way to distribute what the artists are doing.
Yeah, and maybe a way to distribute not only to the small groups who go to museums or theaters, but to lower the level, so that art or culture is part of the evening news, or where really people get the access and get to know it and become acquainted with the openness and the questions that are asked by culture or by arts. But we also would like to talk about one example or one project that we did in collaboration with the Kunstverein Wagenhalle. And just to say, the Kunstverein Wagenhalle is an association of artists, and its main goal is to provide affordable studio space. It is located in a former industrial building close to the city center in Stuttgart. And this area was appropriated by the artists in 2004. And then for many years it was quite precarious. But in 2016, the city of Stuttgart decided to renovate the building instead of demolishing it. And it's so we are here together with 150 colleagues from all disciplines of art and culture and creative production. And there are also social projects here in this area, like urban gardening, food sharing, and bicycle recycling. And I think this is also a very important aspect, this interdisciplinarity and also the crossover to maybe scientific or maybe even more important social projects. And all this mixture of disciplines, of artists, of individuals, of people, it stimulates a lot of exchange, of interaction, and of collaboration. And the idea behind this intervention or this project, there were several ideas. So one was that we want to reclaim this area, the hall, and also the outside premises. We want to reserve this for cultural production, because we think that cities, they need, also in the city center, they need also cultural production, not only presentation. And another aim was to support the interdisciplinarity and the networking between the actors in this area and also in the surrounding neighborhood, because there are also manifold connections. Then we also wanted to emphasize that artists as well as cities, they need areas that are not categorized. So in city planning, you have areas which are zoned for living or for light industries or for recreation or for parks, and that each city needs spaces where this category can develop. So like you give an area for an open-end development and see what's happening there. And then we also wanted to emphasize that artists need more than a studio space. They also need wide areas, outside areas for big projects, for developing maybe big installations or festivals, or just to get thoughts that are going beyond the walls of the studio, and that the artists, they also need platforms to present these ideas which are self-organized. Yeah, and meanwhile, even the mayor is proud of this area.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for highlighting the strong and mutual relationship between culture, arts, and politics, and for presenting how your work has successfully contributed to creating a fertile ground for artistic work in Stuttgart. And with that example in mind, let's hope that there will soon be more favorable conditions and environments for the cultural and creative sector in Europe.